What's up, everybody? We're on a podcast now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the game Echoes of the End. I want to thank the developers for giving me a code. I saw this game a few months ago, and I don't remember if it was announced a few months ago. Maybe it was announced far before then, but I remember seeing it, and it stood out to me, okay? It really popped, and to be honest with you, it gave me, like, Plague Tale and, like, Banisher's Ghosts of New Eden vibes. And now, what I want to stress, actually, very early on in this video is don't assume that, okay? I did the wrong thing there. It reminded me of those games in trailers and gameplay, but really what it ends up being is a more discount God of War. That really is probably the best comparison that I could give to it. I'll describe the game in greater lengths as we go, but you know, the visuals stood out, you know, the kind of companion type things stood out, and those were the games that I likened it to, you know, in my head. What this game ultimately is, though, in my opinion, is just not very good. I think, and maybe based off the title, maybe I haven't decided the title just yet as I'm recording, but there is a good game buried deep within here. There really is. There are some standout features. I think the bugs and the glitches and a lot of that stuff gets in the way. It feels like a game that was just thrown together very, very fast, and it just ultimately, it just feels hollow. This feels like a game that was rushed, that just doesn't have much beneath like the front layer. You know, what you see is kind of what you get. And so let me describe this game for you. Hey, maybe it stands out to you. Maybe you want to give it a chance, and we'll go from there, okay? So this is a game that, like I said, God of War. Think God of War. So you're on a pretty linear path, and what you do is you kind of go from area to area. You take in the view, and I want to get to visuals in a second, but I do want to focus on gameplay first. And then you're going to solve more puzzles than you could ever imagine, okay? You go to an area, you solve a puzzle, you walk 30 feet, you do some sort of, you know, kind of middling platform sequence, you do another puzzle. Or you do a little fight. There's 6 enemies, there's 4 enemies, there's 2 enemies. The variations of them changes every other time, okay? You're going to face somebody, and then you're going to see them again like 10 minutes later. And that's the game. There's a couple bosses, you know, here and there. That's the game. And it's just not good enough. The puzzles, I will say, and I was looking around, the puzzles I do think kind of unanimously are talked about as this is that one strength of the game. The puzzles, as you would hope for pretty much any game, right? Can the puzzles evolve? When you're doing puzzle solving in the first hour and then a couple minutes later you learn a new power or something happens, right? Something kind of shifts. Does that make an impact on the puzzles 10 minutes later? And it does. And I will say, I mean, there were some times I was stuck, and I would say kind of like gameplay-wise I was stuck. I remember there was a sequence where you have to light torches, and you have to use a crank to kind of turn a gear, and you have to have like the fires pass off to each other. So like fire A lights fire B, then you have to turn so fire B can light fire C at the same time, and the cranks will turn them, and then you have to turn, gear C. So it took me like 10 minutes to freaking line these things up. But look, ultimately, the puzzles is the saving grace. It does enough to change it up, so you're never going to do exactly the same puzzle more than once. And you're also, there's a nice flow to it where you're going to learn new things or a new power or a new mechanic or a new gimmick or whatever you want to say, right? And then the puzzle 10 minutes from now is going to be a slight variation of the puzzle you just did. Or there's an easy version of the puzzle, right? Gets you, used to the mechanic, and then 20 minutes later, all of a sudden, you're doing that puzzle on steroids, right? It's much harder. That's the best part of it. But one thing I would throw out there is, like, number one, I'm not really a huge puzzle guy. I mean, I've played puzzle games. I actually really like the game The Witness. I'm sure many of you maybe have heard of that puzzle game. I can do it, but I'm not a huge fan. And to be honest, this game relies on puzzles as I would say 70 to 75% of the game is just puzzle solving. Not really what I was looking for. So that, I mean, it was a somewhat of a benefit, but somewhat actually kind of hurt the game. The actual gameplay itself, this is where I need to really kind of tear into it, because the game definitely has some glitches and some bugs, and it did not come out in a good state. And the developers, I think, have apologized. They've talked about that patches around the way. Look, I'm a big, and even though they gave me a code, and again, like I appreciate that, I'm going to be honest. works. And I've said this before. Like, I believe that when you get the game day one, like when the game comes out, it needs to be in the best state possible. I don't care if you get the patch out 5 days later, whoopee for those people, but like the people that get it day one, and I know like maybe it sounds bad coming from somebody who received the game, but say you bought it. Say you bought this game day one. To have to wait 5, 6, 7, 8 days to get a better experience than day one is not okay. And we've really slipped as consumers to allow this behavior to happen, and happens obviously all over the place, right? Cyberpunk, etc., etc. So this game has that. There's some graphical, like, the thing is, this game is very pretty. It can be let me say that. The game can be very pretty. The game relies on its visuals as kind of like this wow factor where, again, there's these large vistas. I was just talking about this with like Mafia: The Old Country, right? You see these mountains and the volcano and all this stuff like far away, right? And it's just this beautiful, landscape to just look at. This game tries to do it, but it's got that double A kind of jank, but then it's trying to be, I'd say, triple A with the visuals. So like the water can look good, but then, I caught the game. I don't know if I recorded it or not, but I caught it once where it's like, the water looked good until I moved the camera like up or down. If I changed the angle of like the sun, like if I made it more shady, the water looked pathetic. It looked like it almost degraded from like a PS5 visual to like a PS2 visual just by me pressing up or down with the camera. And, so I joke, but to be honest, the game can look great, but it can also look really, really rough depending on your camera angle, depending on what parts like load in or fix themselves or whatever. And sometimes this gets in the way of the gameplay. So look, your character moves really oddly. Okay, there is a weight to this character that I haven't really experienced. Like, here's the thing. Characters can have this, like, weightiness. Like, think how Sucker Punch did it from, like, Sly to Cole, I guess, right? So, like, Sly Cooper, Infamous, Ghost of Tsushima, and the Ghost of Yotei. There's this, like, heavy, weighty feeling, but the game, I don't know how to really say it. The game, like, wraps around it, and it just works. Eventually, it just kind of works. Now, look, you get used to it in this game, but the weightiness is a problem. And when you're fighting, I don't know who tested out these mechanics, guys, but let me tell you, the fighting needs to radically change, and if it doesn't, this is going to hold the game back for its entire life, being on the market. So I actually experienced a couple fun little things here. One time, I fell off an edge, okay? Now, you'll take, like, the fall damage. It'll take damage from your health. So I fell off the edge. You know how, like, the game will, like, respawn you, right? And maybe you have a second to catch your breath, or maybe you have a second or when it respawns you, maybe you're, like, 10 feet away from the enemy. So I had a fun little thing happen where the game, like, glitched. I fell off the edge. It took some health from me. It respawned me, and you know how the screen is black? When the screen came back to life, I took a hit. I literally, the screen came back to light where I could see things, and as it did it, I saw my health bar go down again because an enemy just struck me. So the game was like loading and processing things when the screen was still black, when I was still responding. And that's just a little example. And that's a big deal, by the way. That's pretty sad. And then, I don't know, just like when you're hitting an enemy, I found another fun thing that ranged enemies can actually shoot through everything. So if you're fighting an up close, like, somebody has a sword, you have a sword, you're taking them out. If there's a guy behind him that's shooting, even if you block the projectile with the enemy, it goes straight through the enemy and it hits you, no matter what. And it could be a very far distance. The enemy will find a way to hit you, and it'll even hit you through their own person, which is that's not acceptable because the gameplay already is just hollow. There's not a lot to it. You can learn new abilities, new skills, and they do make it a little bit more like cool, right? Like the game evolves a little, but at its core, it's just not fun. It has this weird weight to it. It's got a lot of bugs and errors to it. And then the discount God of War thing, by the way, like your companion can do abilities, and those abilities are fine, but it just feels like a little bit of like that rip-off God of War. And then in terms of like everything else, like the characters, man, look, now I didn't beat this game, okay? This is like more of an impressions video than anything else. The characters do not stand out. I wanted to give give them it. I think the performance is pretty okay in terms of like them recording the lines coming through the speakers into my ears. They've got it. Like you can tell like they're professional voice actors that did it, but the characters just they come across very one-dimensional. I've actually read that they don't change from being kind of one, like there's not a huge evolution. I'm not telling you that from my experience. I'm telling you that's just what I saw. So from that angle, and that's kind of where I was at, and that's kind of why I stopped and then I made this video, is from the story and characters, there's just not enough. It just feels very hollow. It feels very by the books. The world's not really interesting. You've kind of seen that stuff before, and look, that's okay if they want to do other things. And then the issue is the other things is the platforming is fine. It's not bad. The puzzle solving, I think, is definitely above average, and the gameplay or combat is far, far, far below average. And then there's just all the bugs and glitches. So, I mean, this really just feels like a game that if you gave it another year, it could have been, like a point or two higher on some sort of scale. Now, I don't give scores, and I don't really want to qualify this as a review. I'm just kind of throwing this out there to let you know my thoughts on it. It's, I don't even know what you want to say, maybe a below average game. I don't think it's terrible. I would absolutely not say that. I don't think this is a bad or terrible game. I think it's just very meh, very average. Is it worth your time? That's up to you always to decide. I would say with all of the huge, hopefully great games coming out over the next couple weeks, it's probably not worth your time. But hey, maybe it's on a huge sale. Maybe it's 50, 60, 70% off and you snag it. I think with bug fixes like 3, 4, 5 months from now, the game could definitely be tolerable. And that's, for what that's worth, it could be whatever, right? But right now, it's just too much of an average game. And then all the issues, kind of pile in, and it just becomes worse because of it. So that's my thoughts on it. You let me know what you think. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.